Hello YouTube land, Tycander here doing another action figure review, and today we are having a look at the Neca Dungeons and Dragons Strongheart Ultimate action figure. And now if you're not familiar with this character, or the D&D setting for this character, it was originally part of the LGN line, which this guy is from. I'll be bringing someone that resembles this guy in later for comparison. But this is the Dungeons and Dragons LJN themed. Well, technically it was called Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, but this is Neca's Dungeons and Dragons line. So there has been a couple of companies now doing Dungeons and Dragons figures, which is quite interesting to see. From way back in the day, there was only the LGN line really, and there was a few kind of 3¼ inch action figures, and then there was kind of statues and stuff like that that were actually in scale with some of the 3¼ inch stuff, so they weren't fully posable. They were just for you to interact with and then so on. But NECA have started doing more high-end kind of Dungeons and Dragons figures. Hasbro has released they released figures based on the recent movie. Well, at the time of this recording, the movie came out last year in 2023, so it was a recent movie. But the figures that they released were based on the movie versions, and they also did figures based on the cartoon, the old 80s cartoon. So they did that. But these are based on the original figures. So the box for this guy is one of these window box packaging with the little Velcro tab, and it showcases obviously the figure is not in there, but it would showcase the figure if you were to have it. The background is quite nice. It's kind of looks like an old graveyard sort of style background, which is kind of cool. And then the figure is a toy photography for the figure. It's him kind of standing on a mountainscape with kind of a grass scenery and mountains behind. You can see a picture of the figure's face. On the inside cover, you can actually flip down his visor, which is a nice nod, but it is kind of daunting as well at the same time. So this guy is Strongheart. He is the first of the good figures that they have done, or the good aligned figures. He is actually a paladin, or paladin, whichever way you want to pronounce the word. Strongheart is a fearless seeker of justice, risking his life to ensure that good triumphs over evil. He is thoughtful, kind, and seldom rash, yet never hesitant to punish those who spit in the face of law and order. Strongheart doesn't worship a god, but devotes himself to an ideal, that the world can be spared from evil by those who have enough courage to stand against it. He prefers to fight with his trusty sword, steel, and aims to capture and imprison evildoers, slaying them only if they cannot be apprehended. So it also gives you a rundown of what's included in the box. So you have sword and sheath, dagger, hammer, shield, articulated visor, cloth cape, and interchangeable hands. And then the other figure in this wave is Zarak, the evil half-orc assassin, which I will do a review for. Hopefully will be the next one after this. I got both of these together from the good folks over at Uncanny Collectibles here in Ireland, so I'll put a link in the description below. I think they have pre-orders up again for these guys. Their initial lot have come and gone. I think they have pre-orders again for these guys to come in again, and they still have the Wave 1 Grim Sword still in stock at the time of this recording at a slightly reduced price, so there is that. But that is it for the box. It is quite nicely done packaging. Again, this is actually the first of the good figures. So if I just bring in Grimsword's box, for example, you can see up in the corner here, maybe you can't, if I just pull back my camera a touch, you'll be able to see, and just angle it up. So on the corners of each box, the evil figures have a purple band with evil action figure on it, and then the good guys has a red, and that's to denote the character class. So there is one other good character which I don't think he's dropped yet, which is the dwarf. which is Balak or something along those lines. His name is. I'm trying to remember his name off the top of my head, but I can't remember his name. But there is another good character on the way. He hasn't been released yet, but that will at least, it won't balance out the numbers of good versus bad guys, because there'll be 2 good versus 3 bad guys. So hopefully they might do another good guy just to balance out the whole, give it a bit more balancing. So Strongheart here is incredibly well sculpted. I really like how he turned out. If I lift up the soft good cape, you can see the chain holding his shoulder armor is actually attached onto his waist belt, and it kind of goes all the way around. You can see this kind of line symbol for his chest. One of the interesting things, I did have the original figure way back in the day, like, well, I didn't have it from when the time period he came out, but I had a hand-me-down version of him from, I think it was my brother had him. And unfortunately, because of the way the older figures, this one is a second version of Warduke. The original version of Warduke had an O-ring. This is the later version where they replaced the O-ring with the kind of more standard Star Wars style articulation, but they added in Battlematic, where you have a lever or something would move on the character to give a battle kind of thing, whereas the original figures didn't have that. At least I don't believe they had that. They only had like the kind of basic articulation. But he was part of that original wave. He got a second release figure which has the Battle Magic in it, or Battlematic, I think it's called. And the way the Battlematic worked on him was, I think he had a sword slash action, just similar to how Warduke would look. But as I said, my original figure that I had of him had no lower legs, because it used to be an O-ring similar to a G.I. Joe with the rubber kind of piece on it, and that would perish over time, and I think it just snapped, and it was basically a hand-me-down. But unfortunately, I don't have the original to do a comparison to, but the head sculpt on this is really good. The head is on a ball joint. It's actually a double joint. I think the neck is actually a joint as well. And now I would stress being very careful moving the head, because these attachments on the helmet are very thin, and so is the visor. So the visor does move down. I can get it to cover his eyes. You can get it so you can just barely see his eyes through the visor. The original figure, the visor wasn't movable. It was actually sculpted open, and you always saw his face. The original figure, I think, did have a soft goods cape, had something similar to a soft goods cape anyway. And again, he is very similar in design. He has the blues, the steel metal for the armor, the blues. In fact, they really went to town on this. His boots are in that kind of blue as well, although it's more material style, whereas armor has a metallic sheen. His arms can move forward. These shoulder paladin bits do tend to get in the way a slight bit, but his arms can move forward. There is a bicep swivel, which is very tight on mine. There is a single jointed elbow on mine. Some figures have double jointed elbows. Some figures have single jointed. You'll see that when I get around to doing the Zarek review. He actually has the double joint elbows. His wrists are on a swivel, and depending on which wrist or hand you have in, has a different joint. We'll go through his accessories in a minute. His legs can move forward and back. He has a double jointed knee. If I just move it around to the back, which I haven't actually really moved. He does have the thigh swivel as well. He does have a very tight double jointed knee, which I have not moved yet. He has ball jointed legs with rocker ankles, and he has peg holes on the bottom of his feet. So he is quite articulated and quite nicely sculpted. And he does have, so the things that are separate in the box, his shield is actually separate in the box. Obviously you have it on his arm. His hand, his default hand that you get is the sword grip hand, so you do have to swap out his hands. So he does come with both left and right version of the shield grip hand, but I think it's intended to be held on his left hand more than right. The way the shield works is you have to disconnect the hand anyway to slide the wrist guard part, and then have the hand slide in between that. So if I can, I'll see if I can pop it out or off without damaging it, hopefully. So there is two straps. One is more wider for the wrist section, and the other one is a little bit more narrow. So if you were to turn it around and put it on that way, you'd overstretch the strap. So I think it is really only designed to go on the one side. So the original figures had handles on the inside of their shield, so they could have them on either hand, but depending which one you had, you could swap it out. So as I said, he does have another version of that open palm hand that the shield kind of slides into. It's not really usable in that sense, but it is an option. You have the usual dual punching fist hand, so you have left and right punching fist hands. You have, now they look almost identical, but you have a wide grip sword hand because the actual handle on the sword is quite wide, but you also have another set of gripping hands, and they're actually very small. And the reason for that is he comes with a dagger. I'm going to see if I can get his sheath out. It's probably not going to come out for me without being awkward. This sword sheath is actually separate. Actually, if I take off the shield, it will make it easier to see. So this is short scabbard for his sword and has a smaller dagger scabbard on it. So his big sword, if I can get it out, come on. It's a bit tough to get out. There we go. I would advise caution putting it in and out of that scabbard, but it is doable. He has a very nicely sculpted, put together sword. Let me just stand him up here. Pick up his sword. So it is quite nicely sculpted. Almost looks like something that would be out of Lord of the Rings. It's fairly plain. There's not much like a huge amount of detail on it. It has just a kind of a black wrap for the handle. And then it's just like a plain broadsword. So there's nothing kind of super fancy about it. It doesn't have any kind of detailing going down the blade or anything like that. And then he has a tiny dagger, which again has a sheath for it. It's very similar vein. It's very small, so I would be careful about losing it. But it also fits in this smaller dagger holder for his shield, or for his scabbard. So you can have him holding all these weapons, because he also comes with this nifty looking mallet hammer type thing, which is something he didn't come with the original figure. So bear with me a moment. I'm going to see if I can get him to hold it, all his accessories. So it just takes a little bit of maneuvering to get it into his hand. And just slide that shield back up. And then if you want him, he can be pretty much all armed up with all his gear, except his alternate hands. You'll have to find some place to store those. But he looks pretty nifty with all his gear on him. So height wise, he's going to be a little bit tall because of the plume on the back of his head. So if I take it into account, it puts him nearly in the 8-inch mark, just a hair over 8 inches. So and the wings on the helm actually make him around 8 inches. But base height, he is 7 if he didn't have the helmet on. It would be cool if he had an option to remove the helmet and have the helmet as a removable item, but I believe it is non-removable. There is his other wave mate does have a removable actual helmet or hat. So Zarek actually has 2 head options. He has a hooded up head, or head with a hood on, and a head without a hood. So he seems to be the first of the figures to have an alternate head. Everyone else just has their base heads. So if you want to have Strongheart dueling his nemesis of Warduke, we'll bring in Warduke. You can see how they look together, the evil warrior of Warduke. Or if you want them to have a bit more of a challenge, you can have Warduke telling the evil knight of Grimdark, who does tower over this guy. Grimsword is quite a huge character. So he's like the biggest out of all of them so far. Even though I don't remember the figure being bigger than the other, the standard figure being that much taller than the other figures. I thought he was around the same size as this guy, but because I didn't do a comparison the last time, you can see how Warduke looks compared to his original counterpart. They took the same colors but just made it pop with blues, metallic blues, instead of flat blue. So he does look really, really good. So if you have all of these guys so far, I'm going to bring Zarak in as well, just so you can see the evil guys, all the bad guys together so far. So Zarak does stand way smaller than everyone else. It is weird because he's supposed to be half orc, and in current D&D and like a couple of the previous editions of D&D or Dungeons and Dragons, half orcs were average human height. So he's kind of weird that he's so small. But I do remember, I do have, out of the couple of actual LGN figures I do have, the other one I have is Perle, he's called, or Melf, which is the elven character. He's tiny compared to the rest of them, but so I'm not sure if there was a scaling issue or it's just back in the day the creature characters had different scales. But he was supposed to be an elf warrior or an elf of some kind anyway, but he's like the size of a halfling, so it's kind of weird. But all in all, he looks really cool, and hopefully I'll probably be bringing all these guys back in for when I do Zarak's review, but they all look pretty nice together on a shelf. So again, just be careful of some of the more fragile parts on him. Those wings on his helm, the visor on his helmet, the scabbard, putting the sword in and out of the scabbard can be a bit iffy. If you're worried about anything breaking, I would recommend kind of heating it up slightly, just especially for joints. I always find that joints on Neca figures need to be heated up. Even though I'm not sure if I mentioned it in previous videos, I did pick up the Feral Predator from Prey, and I was moving the gauntlet, his right wrist gauntlet, because it was actually not in the right position when it came, and even after heating it up, it did snap on me, so I'm pretty much gutted about that. And I did reach out to the company that I got it off, and unfortunately they don't have any more, so they could only offer me a refund. So I have a busted Prey Feral Predator from Neca, which I'm not sure what I'm going to have to do with it. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video review of the Strongheart figure. He is pretty cool. Again, he is the first of the hero characters, so hopefully, I can't remember, as I said, I can't remember off the top of my head what that dwarf guy is called again, but he is coming. He's the dwarf fighter. But hopefully we might get one of the good mages or the wizards or something at some point, as a kind of just something a bit different to just fighters, because nearly everyone so far has been a warrior class, with the exception of Zarak here. He's a assassin, so but he's still kind of a melee fighter. Hopefully we might get some mage guys with some interesting magic effects as well down the line. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this review, and as always, please like, comment and subscribe to my channel, and hopefully you enjoyed this. Have a great day.